We are live. We are live in the Inner Healing and Transformation Summit. This is like what, day 5. Incredible conversations with amazing, powerful African healers, teachers, coaches, all women, which is like, yay, power to us. And I don't know for you guys who are watching how the transformation has been just from observing and listening to this conversation, because for me, I'm having a blast. And we're going to have another blast today because we are speaking leadership in sexuality for the African Divine Feminine with Nehanda, who is here with me. Hi, Nehanda.
Hi, how you guys doing?
I'm sure that we're really great and eager to know more about leadership in sexuality, what this even means, you know. So before we go deep into this conversation that is really broad and powerful, let's start with your journey, your own personal journey in leadership and into leadership and sexuality.
Okay, so my journey, I suppose, started in Zimbabwe because I was born there, and my father was in leadership, and so I had a really good mentor. He was like in government, and he was always encouraging me to express myself, and he taught me dance. So he was the first introduction to creativity for me, because he taught me how to dance when I was 4 years old. And I didn't realize that that was like such a simple gift to give your child, but it actually was the thing that actually saved my life, because shortly after that I was sexually molested by a family member. And this is like really common in Africa. It's like 1 in 3 women is molested. And because I was encouraged to always be dancing and expressing, it actually kept me sane to a degree, because it kept me in my body. And a lot of women who've had like sexual trauma, one of the things that happens is that they leak sexual energy, and they have a really difficult time being in their bodies because it's too painful. And the thing is, one way to heal trauma is to actually go into it with movement and expression, because then you're not in the emotion, it's just moving out of your body, and the stress and the pain is moving and turning into art. So that's how art is used to heal. And one of the things I noticed as well about my dad is that he always would dance in rallies, and he would do a speech and he'd always start dancing, and then he'd get everyone to start dancing. And he was like, they once put him in the paper as the Kwasa Kwasa dancing kid. And I realized that for him, dance was a way to connect with people and be in his body. And when he was in his body, he was able to feel people. He was able to communicate from a much more authentic space. He was in his joy. He was in his inner child. Like the purity of his being was more there because he was in his body and not so much in the head. And I think the way we've been going wrong as leaders in the world is that most of our leaders are completely dissociated from their bodies. They're completely just in the head, which is a very limited way of thinking critically. It's a very limited way of being able to connect with the average person.
What is happening?
There we go.
Hello?
Hi.
Are we still? Hello? Are we still? Oh, oh, I don't know why. Okay, let me start the video. Okay, we are back. We had a bit of interference there, but yeah,
That's okay.
continue.
So one of the limitations that I noticed with leaders these days is that most of them are not really in their bodies. They're not grounded human beings. They're not centered. They're not connected with feeling and sensing. And as a leader, that is absolutely paramount, to feel what is coming through you, what your words are, how people are responding to you and receiving you. When we are not in the body, it's a lot harder to fully connect and fully understand people and fully feel people. And you're only using one side of your brain when you lead like that. Whereas when we lead and we're connected with our bodies, our sexual energy, that's our creative energy. So sexual energy and creative energy are the same thing. So sexual energy doesn't have to be used for just having sex and making babies. It can be used for creating new visions, new projects, new ideas, words. The throat and the womb are one energy center. And so when I would dance, and when I noticed when my father would dance, you're connecting with the hara, which is like the men have a womb as well. It's not like a physical womb, like a feminine energy, but we have the sacral energy center. And this is where we all birth and create ideas and visions. And I noticed that when he would dance in his heart, and even when I dance from my heart, that my intentions for the world are more connected to unity. They're more connected to love. They're more connected to acceptance, self-love, tolerance, patience, gentleness, abundance. And these are all qualities that were greatly lacking in the world, because you look at even like a leader, for example, like Donald Trump, who you could say on some level he would be someone who has abundance and money, but because he's so disconnected from his body and his creativity and his humanity, in a sense, his idea of what the government needs to do and how they need to create wealth is egocentric. It's coming from a very limited perspective. It's only looking out for one type of person, which is people like him. It's very limited in that way. And I feel like if he was someone who was creative and expressing himself, even through movement, through his sexuality, in a really healthy way, he would be a very different human being. And this is why our sexuality has been something that has been targeted to limit us as human beings, because when we're disconnected from that, we feel shame, we feel guilt, we do things that are not in integrity. When I was growing up in Zimbabwe, there was a lot of people either having a very love-hate relationship with their sexuality. On one hand, they would express it, but at times it would be only with alcohol and only for a certain, outcome, instead of just expressing yourself, because it's good to do that as a human being. It's healing. And the people that would repress their sexuality a lot of the time would have affairs, they would cheat, they would be dishonest, and it would weigh on their own souls, and that affects you as a person. And so, these distorted ways of dealing with our sexuality has meant that our leadership is distorted as well, because our leaders have the same problems. They're also carrying shame, but they're not allowed to express anything. Like, you look at a lot of the leaders in the world now, they're not allowed to be sexy. They're not even really allowed to be creative either, which is really bizarre, because in ancient times, in ancient advanced civilizations, leaders were also musicians. They were creatives. They were artists. They were shamans. They were using all their senses. They were really connecting to the part of them that was human. And so they were more empathic. And so, yeah, there's an extremely big connection with leadership and sexuality.
I love it. I'm just like, yes, and I have so many ideas to explore, to expand further on everything that you are saying. But as you are speaking, I'm connecting it to myself of how I feel. For me, it's not dance, but poetry. It's writing. When I'm connected to my, my imagination, my native connection to the universe, to universal energy. It's like when I'm creating at that level. and how when I'm centered like that, in fact, I'm at a point where I realize that I could never do anything if I'm not centered, if I do not come back to my body. And really, if I'm not in my body, I'm not going to be as creative, as um, aware of the importance of bringing all these ideas that you're talking about, unity, abundance, inspiration, all those other good things that we need as a race, you know. And the fact that it I could say that only in the past 2 years, that's when I really started regularly using, say, being in my body, feeling my body. And part of what I had to do was, you know, I grew up being the namaste girl. So what I would do is cover up my body, you know, wear like the way you imagine a healer to wear, you know, dresses like this. And when I started being in my body more and really feeling myself in my body, and that's when I started wearing sexy and wearing, you know, tops that, you know, you can see my breast and all of that. And it was so liberating for me. And I didn't realize how much covering up and just also going along with the archetype of the healer, of what a certain healer is supposed to look like, or what a good woman is supposed to wear and look like, was really oppressive and limiting to my own creativity, that I couldn't even create art if I wasn't liberated like that. You know, and I really started seeing the connections that the more I could go outside and wear the short skirt with, you know, my breast looking beautiful and feeling sexy, the more I could be creative and really feel good about myself and just be this alive person, because I was connected, you know, to that sacred energy that, you know, you're talking about, the sexual energy, creative energy, you know.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you say that, because I think it's not so much that, you know, if we cover up that we can't be creative, but it's the energy that's happening for you while you're covering up. So some women might cover up and not feel like she's like suppressing herself. I know with my type of human, when my mother would say to me, "You can't wear that," it was like, you know, like I felt like she was choking me. Like I was like, why not? It's my body and I can adorn it how I want. I can celebrate it how I want. So for me, um, dressing exactly how I felt I wanted to express myself was the way I liberated my soul and my myself, and I would be more in my power. It's very interesting because there's an archetype that in the spirituality that I've experienced in Melbourne, that they call the slut archetype, or the sacred whore. And it's not really like in a negative way, like the way we've been taught that those words are, but it's actually a part of your feminine nature that just wants to be free. Like she's just like, she doesn't have rules. It doesn't mean that you're going to be promiscuous, but you're just going to be wild and it's okay. And you're going to be cheeky and it's okay. And you're going to be vivacious and fun. And I feel like that archetype has been the most suppressed archetype by patriarchy, because women who are in that energy are scary, like for men, you know, who are not in their power. Because owning your sexuality and celebrating it is power. And so what patriarchy has done is they only allow women to be in those archetypes if it's benefiting someone else, a man, financially, or you can do it for your man, you can do it in a strip club, you can express that, but it needs to be controlled. But really, this is just a natural part of self-expression of the sacred feminine. And so, and how you express that part of yourself varies from woman to woman. For some people, it's just wearing that little bit of makeup every day, or, you know, while she's wearing a hijab. For some women, it's like stripping down. For me personally, like it was about feeling safe in my body, and as someone who'd been sexually abused, knowing that I can work with a man creatively and he's not trying to have sex with me. You know, he's seeing me as a vessel and a being before he's seeing me as a sexual object. And that for me, when I experienced that my first time in my life, it was at a festival in Melbourne called Confest, where all these families go and they camp in nature and it's optional to wear clothes. So I went because I was curious, and I went and I was like, okay, if it's optional to wear clothes, how does that work? But something just told me you need to experience this. And when I got there, the day that I was wearing clothes, was the day that I met all the men that were like sleazy and weird. The day I stripped down was the day I met the nicest human beings. No one looked at my private parts when they were talking to me. They would look at my eyes. And I was like, what? Are these people not seeing my naked body? Like, but it's like children, parents walking around swimming in mud, being naked and not having sex, just being humans. And that's the first time I experienced what I know is some people call erotic innocence, or just the purity that is actually inherent in sexual energy. It actually is a pure energy. It's the purest energy that we come into this world with. It's not, but it's been bastardized. It's been abused. We can actually control ourselves. Men don't have to, when you wear a miniskirt, don't have to behave like wild animals. It's like they can be respectful. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, we've actually been brainwashed. And I can actually see around a whole group of people and we're all naked and no one is checking me out. No one wants my phone number and no one's trying to have sex with me. I don't feel violated. I feel safer than I've ever felt in my whole life. And I feel completely in my power. And then that's when I was like, yeah, I'm on a mission now to like really educate people that we have really weird ideas about the body and that we just see ourselves as sexual objects when actually you're a being.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, and your breasts are not there to be fondled by a man. They're part of your heart chakra. you know, and so I think the more women that feel safe to just express themselves however they want and don't see and are not doing it necessarily from an energy of, oh, I need to attract men, but more from an energy of, oh, okay, like I just feel sexy and I have really nice boobs. And you know what? I want to keep, when I look down, I just want to see my boobs because they're so beautiful. And, you know, and I think when I looked at your photos on Instagram, I was like, I felt a confidence in someone who is confident in themselves and self-assured in their body. And it's beautiful to see. And I feel like a lot of young girls need to see that as opposed to see women being sexy only when they're selling products or when it was some sleazy music video that some guy is like really exploiting you, because that's the only time we're really given permission to see sexy women in some societies. Like Rihanna can do it but you can't, and she can only do it when some guy is like there, you know. But and this is not really the truth of who we are as Africans. It really isn't. You know, so many cultures, nudity was not nudity. It wasn't obscene. It was just your body, it was just your vessel, and you were seen as a being and not just a sexual object. And some tribes still have that in like some of the Sudanese tribes, the Himba tribes, some of the Kenyan tribes, some of the tribes still live like this. And I think it's so beautiful.
For me, I had to, you know, when I started healing this, it started needing to be as public as me putting it in on Instagram, putting my beautiful breasts on Instagram, because one, we can describe me as a woman with a bastia body, chubby side, right? And I used to live my life with the idea that one day I'm going to have the body that is accepted to have the breast out. As someone who's a little bit chubby, I couldn't possibly be sexy like that. You know, it was a very weird belief system that I had, limiting belief that I had, that I have to lose weight to be the specific body type, and then that's when I started putting pictures of me in a bikini, you know. And my yoga teacher, she said that, but so does this mean that this entire time you're not going to love yourself, you're not going to be grounded in your own current body until you arrive to this person that you think you have to be, you know? And that really shifted so much in me, because I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm not in my own body, I'm not grounded. I'm rejecting myself every single day. This means that I cannot even look at myself in the mirror because it's not the ideal, you know. And that really affected how I feel about myself, but also how I am intimately with other people, women and men. such that if I go to the gym, I will not be changing in front of every other woman. I would want to go into a separate room. And it was just like, no, this is not how you're supposed to live life. You are supposed to be comfortable in your own body, grounded in your own body, however way that it looks. Because what I was carrying, the emotion was this deep shame of how my body looks like, of how sexual it is, how the hips are larger, and all of those other things. And shame is such a debilitating emotion, and it affects not just this one instance of the body, but every other space you enter. So I can't imagine what it's like for you as well if you went through a trauma like sexual violence at a young age, what that shame is like. It must be amplified. So I would want to know just what your experience was like, learning to go back to your own body from that perspective of that violent experience that you
Yeah, so it's been a really big journey coming into the body, because there's two parts of coming into the body. There's coming into the body where you do a lot of physical activity and you learn how to breathe properly. I think even some people, they might even be very active, but they're still not really in their bodies, because to be really in your body, the way I'm in my body now and the way I was in my body as a child is completely different. Like now I'm aware of parts of my body I've never felt before, but it's come from a deep journey to choose to heal the pain that I was carrying all these years. Because when I was growing up in Zimbabwe and not even aware that I needed to heal my sexual trauma, I had a weird relationship with my body, and I was carrying really strong hatred for men and the patriarchy, and I wasn't really aware of it. And so I would use my sexuality as a weapon. And so I would be in my body, but there was an agenda, sometimes it would be very pure, when I'm with my friends and we're dancing, but there were times where I was using my body from a shadow place and hurting myself even more. And so it's only when I grew up, maybe fast forward in my 30s, and started to really understand about shamanic healing and yoga and breathing, that I realized, wow, okay, like I move my hips a lot, but I'm actually not really in my hips that much. Like it looks like that to a lot of people, but my soul is like somewhere up here. I just became really aware that like even my hamstrings, like then I'm not really there. What's in my hamstrings? Why am I not in my hamstrings? And I started to ask those questions. And then the places where I had a lot of, where I was storing a lot of fat, and no matter how much exercise and dieting, like this like little spot on my belly, it just, nothing would change. And then, okay, I knew that, okay, I'm storing something there. What am I storing that I just don't want to let go? And so the body takes you into different journeys, but there's two parts. There's the part where you decide to have a more conscious practice with your physical body of learning to breathe properly, learning to really stretch and feel the different parts of your body. And then there's the part where you start to have an internal dialogue with your soul about what's actually going on inside the body. And most people don't even know how to do this. And I didn't know. I had to learn. And then once I learned, I kind of really started to practice on myself and also with clients. But one thing I can say with sexual trauma is, unless the sexual trauma is healed, it doesn't matter how much you dance, it doesn't matter how much physical activity you do, you're still carrying weird vibes. And so what happens is, when you're dancing and you've been sexually traumatized and you haven't healed it, you might even perform and you'll attract really dodgy people. You'll attract, men that want to exploit you. You'll attract further trauma, because sexual trauma attracts more sexual trauma. It attracts predators. It attracts, because you're leaking energy. That wound is still there, and so it's still vibrating out in your aura, and it's like, and it just attracts more negativity. You might even be losing money in your life because your sacral is your abundance, and how, you know, you deal with like your gifts and share your energy to and get an exchange of like money and financial support. It's like your bounty. And so when we've had trauma, we have what are called imprints, and we leak sexual energy. And when we leak sexual energy, we leak our creativity. We also lose money. It can result in losing money. Also, like for me, that part of my belly where I was storing all the grief from the trauma meant that I couldn't really, and I was carrying a lot of shame. So I didn't really believe in myself as much as I convinced my mind I did. In my body, it was still like, no. And also my inner child was very not in the body. So the inner child, that energy is like right in the core. It's like, you know, those Russian dolls that have layers. So the inner child is like the most layer of your physical anatomy and your energy. And any sexual trauma, the inner child has been compromised. So that part of you checked out a long time ago. It might not even be anywhere near you. It's trapped in the past somewhere. And so what happens when we're disconnected from our inner child, it's difficult to be imaginative. It's difficult to live in the world fully believing yourself and trusting life and feeling safe and being creative and imaginative. And you kind of are very serious as well. Like you have this shadow of being really serious all the time. So these were the things that I noticed were happening in my life as a result of not fully healing my sexual trauma. And also I couldn't really use my voice. Or if I did, I couldn't sing. I used to sing a lot when I was a child, and then I stopped after the sexual trauma because the throat and the cervix are one energy center. So any trauma on the cervix affects your throat, and it empowers you, so you're no longer able to effectively use your voice and project your voice, which is really your will and your truth. And so when that's compromised, you know, you might be able to write, but you know, there's so many layers to the voice, and it's such a delicate part of the feminine anatomy. And it's very, because that's where we communicate boundaries, we communicate when we don't like something, when something is important to us, when it's in the heart. And a lot of African women, I noticed that whether there's just been so much trauma to African women in the past lineages, that whether it's through war, whether it's just through patriarchal systems, religions that are really suppressive of the feminine. So many of us are even if we weren't sexually traumatized, someone down the line was in family. And you're carrying that wound in your DNA. And so you might still be shutting down your voice, and your anatomy might still be reflecting that trauma, even if you didn't have it. And so, yeah, having that deep dialogue with the body and really releasing all of that stuff on a DNA level, on a trauma level, completely changes everything in the body, changes the whole game.
Yeah. Last year I started really looking into my, say, body weight issue, and because I'd always had this losing weight, gaining it, losing weight, gaining it. And I mean, I got to a point where I realized, one, that it was not about the food, it wasn't about my inability to exercise and take care of my own body, but there was so much grief and pain surrounding my relationship with food and how I was using it in my relationship with my own body. And I remembered when we're in psychology, we had to do this process model where we would go back into our own life from the moment of birth, and you could even go beyond your birth to find out what your mom was experiencing prior to the pregnancy and when she got pregnant with you and so on. And I remember a story my mom told me, how when I was 6 months old, she had this helper who was supposed to take care of me. And what will happen with the helper is my mom would leave for work, and then her boyfriend will come, and then the boyfriend was a combi driver. So she would take baby me with the driver, and then they go around the city with this baby. And so this means that every time baby Joy cries, what she do is just feed her, like just give her the milk so that she can be quiet. And I think that was the first time I associated that. I think it was how baby Joy was dealing with the feeling of being abandoned by mom. And then started to associate, if you are not feeling good and you are struggling to to process this abandonment feeling, just bring food and then you feel better. And then as I was going deep into this body issue, I started to realize that beyond that, other things that I had was, I don't know when it happened, but we talked about this with banking. My mother wound made me feel like I needed to be in solidarity with my mom. She has also a bigger body, and so I wanted to share her pain, and I didn't want to outshine her by easily losing weight, by being this empowered version of myself. And I was telling my friend as well that I also realized that I grew up feeling that I'm the pretty girl, the smart girl, and that used to really make other women, I felt that it made them shrink a little bit. And because I didn't want them to shrink, what I would do is I would limit myself, reduce my sacred creative energy. And so I literally started to gain weight to eat food so that I have a visible empathic thing you can see about me, then you would feel much better about yourself. So I was just going through this morning, how, like, for me, my struggle with my body is I keep abandoning it because I mean, I don't want to deal with other emotions that are uncomfortable. So I use the body to either hide from these emotions, from really dealing with the emotions. And also, it has a lot to do with my mother wound as well. And that's where I want us to start talking also on the mother wound and how it relates to sexuality. I know it's much bigger than what I'm saying, but I want to give you the chance to talk and tell us more about it.
The mother wound is so intense.
So deep, yeah.
Growing up with my mom, she grew up a lot more suppressed in her expression of her sexuality. She was actually quite prudish in some ways because she grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and those guys don't mess around. You're not even really allowed to wear it. Like, it's very like, you know. And so she grew up with very strict parents who were like this. And also my father's family, it's the same thing, you know. And so to protect me, she didn't want me to be too shiny and radiant in my feminine, too in my light, because I might attract unwanted men and I might attract unwanted experiences. And also, you know, I grew up not really being appreciated for my natural talent of my beauty and femininity and my light. I was more appreciated for my brain. And when I did well at school, that's when it was I was never told, oh, you look really beautiful today, and oh, you look radiant, you know. And as a woman, that's like your natural gift, you know. It's a natural talent, and to shine, you know, we're like flowers, you know, women. And so that really wounded me in a way where I was like, okay, I went down the pathway of, I'm going to just be in IT, I'm going to work in an office. But I couldn't really hide who I was. I tried, you know, I tried to be very masculine in my energy to try and kind of suppress myself a little bit. So I'm, you know, to fit into what my mother's ideal was, but I was absolutely miserable. And the harder I tried, the more it was like so evident that this is not really aligned with my authentic being. The other thing I have to say is that in my mother's generation, they dealt with things like trauma and abuse in a completely different way, which is, let's not deal with it at all. Let's not talk about it. Let's just carry the shame and just shove it under the carpet and pretend it never happened. Because there's also a lack of awareness of the impacts that this has long term on someone and your mental health. There's just a lack of understanding of it and how to deal with that. And I think when I first told my mom I was abused, I think the first thing that happened for her was she probably felt traumatized for me, and she just didn't know how to deal. So she was just like, I'm sorry, but like, we can't talk about it again, basically. Do you know what I mean? Like, just let it go. And she's a strong Christian, so she was just like, just forgive and let it go. And I was like, you know, and I was like, I tried, you know, I did it her way. I suppressed it. I didn't talk about it, but as a result, I made really bad choices growing up with men. I put myself in situations where I was continually exploited. I kept attracting boyfriends that would abuse me. The abuse just never stopped. And I was creating it because I didn't heal my stuff, because my mom was like, you have to heal your stuff. So, that was like a big wounding. And then I realized when I started the healing journey, I had a dream once that it was in the dream, the essence of the dream, it was showing me that my inner child felt abandoned by mom because she didn't hold space for me with that trauma. She didn't help me to heal. She kind of just checked out.
Yeah.
And so that also then created a massive wound within myself and my relationship with the divine mother, even feeling abandoned by the divine. That's how deep the wound becomes,
Yeah.
And when you feel abandoned, abandonment is the root cause of so many issues. Abandonment is what causes a lot of eating disorders. As recently acted as a character who had an eating disorder, and at the core of all her issues was she felt abandoned by her mom. And so always trying to prove herself, putting herself in situations where she was looking for the value to be valued and to be validated, because she never got that from her mom, because she felt abandoned by her mom. And as well, so she had a weird relationship with food as well, because food is where we get our comfort, our nurturing. If you never had that from mom, of course food is gonna be like your best friend. But also underneath abandonment is a whole range of other emotions like shame, feeling alone, feeling rejected, lack of self-worth, and all of that is stored in the body as toxins, which then are in the fat. Because fat is like something that's holding toxins in the body. And your body doesn't matter if you eat salads every day, if you're not ready to release those toxins, your body it'll digest things and it'll just keep holding onto the fat. And it happened to me once. I tried to lose the weight without dealing with my stuff, and I actually started to gain weight. It was like my body fought back. It was like,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know that. I did this healing experience a couple of years back. It's called the journey, in fact. And what we do is we go to our body. We travel into our body, but we travel through our memories. So we will be guided to travel, say, to your liver. And when you arrive there, you are asked to say what memory do you connect with that. And it was this really powerful exercise, because what came up for me was I was 5 years old, and I had this memory of, and I remember being told that this was happened to me, but I didn't have the memory myself. But I saw the memory really clearly, where I somehow locked myself in the wardrobe, and they couldn't find me, and I couldn't breathe, and they had to tear down the wardrobe and get me out. And it was this really, I didn't know that I stored that pain in my liver, and it was really affecting and I was just like, whoa. And I was just like, so what else did I store in my body that looks like I have a huge tummy, but it's not a huge tummy. It's a lot of the memories that you didn't process, a lot of pain that you didn't process, that are now, manifesting as fat, as you're saying, manifesting as a headache, manifesting as a problem that you feel like you keep having over and over. And I think for us also, we can have what would you call this? And I forget. I'm trying to find a lot of issues you have with the womb, as a woman, and because you're not connected with your sexual energy, you're not also healing a lot of the trauma that happened, and you haven't grieved enough. First of all, we never really grieve, because grieving is such a process, So when I went through this exercise of the journey, I had to grieve for that 5-year-old me who was so scared for hours, because people couldn't find her, and they had to, get her out, and it was terrifying, And just when I was crying, there was so much emotion coming out, and other memories as well that seemed to be connected to that, such that now I knew that I was afraid of small spaces, but I never knew why I was afraid of small spaces. And it was because of that trauma, And so when I released and I did this journey, I was releasing all the other time when I felt suffocated. And the suffocation wasn't always physical. it could be I feel suffocated by this person. You know, I feel unsafe with this person. And just it's so wild and so powerful and so sometimes sad that people are so unaware of how every experience of ours, especially the traumatic ones, whether it's a big trauma or a small one like I was locked in a wardrobe, can really manifest in ways that you never imagine. Like for me, I would often feel suffocated by boyfriends because they want this attention from me. And now I realize, oh, the memory is even bigger than the person. The problem here is not about this person, it's about my unhealed and unprocessed traumas and wounds. So it's
Yeah.
so powerful, this work.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you can go into even deeper layers of understanding that as a soul, when you come into this life, your soul is eternal, so it's had other experiences before, and that suffocation theme might have manifested for you as a child with that experience, but maybe they've been lifetimes or experiences that your soul has had where it's been drowned, suffocated for speaking, suffocated for just being you. And it's like a theme, like, and
Yeah.
so unlocking and understanding that trauma doesn't just happen. It's a story that's been going on in the DNA, and it will manifest however it manifests. And sometimes it will manifest as illness. It will especially come as illness when you're not listening. Like the soul, the last way it communicates with you is through the body. When you're like really hard-headed, you're not paying attention to a particular problem, the soul will be like, okay, well, here it is. I'm just going to amplify the pain by giving you a bit of like cancer here. So you really can slow down, you can just stop going to work, and you can deal with this stuff, because the soul wants you to deal with this stuff so you can be your highest, most vibrant expression. And when we're carrying trauma, it's very difficult to be that, because it's like the filter is distorted with trauma, blocks the pure transmission of our soul through the body. It blocks us from the body fully, and if you're not in the body fully, you can't fully express the soul in its most incredible way. And so so the soul's intention sometimes when we suffer, when we get sick, when we have these experiences, is because when you see it happening or you see the illness, then you're like, okay, I see now there's something deeper going on here. And some people heal things permanently, including cancer. It's because they actually went to the root cause of what it is. What is the root of all of this, like this illness, this pain, whatever it is. And I'm going to go on this journey. It might take me a few years, but I'm going to commit to go on this journey, because sometimes, as healing trauma can take years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be something that, like I've developed on my own journey. Because when I was healing my sexual trauma, I went to lots of different practitioners. So I tried lots of different modalities, and I refined kind of the process of what needs to be healed on the DNA, because I studied quantum physics and I studied how we're actually the physics side of what's happening when you have trauma. So on that level, I've worked out how to heal sexual trauma quite efficiently, actually. But you're still going to have to go on the journey. You're going to have to go on the journey of learning how to love yourself. You're going to have to go on the journey of self-believing, having more courage, because just because you've healed a trauma doesn't mean your life completely changes. You still have to make conscious choices in every moment to be a better you. And there's a learning that happens with that. And so, yeah, it's people sometimes think they either don't have to deal with stuff, or they think that if they deal with stuff, if they just do like one plant medicine ceremony, or they go to their shaman or their sangoma, that it's just going to get fixed and then they don't have to deal. But it's like it's yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
Healing is not a quick fix. Sometimes it is, but it's not always a quick fix.
No, because there are so many layers to heal. We have so many wounds. I mean, you have your own personal ones, sure, but like you're saying, we also have ancestral wounds. We have the mass collective wounds that you have to really heal. I mean, I even feel like life is about healing. All of this, and every other time there's always a layer that you're discovering, where you are disempowering yourself, where you are rejecting and abandoning yourself. So it's a lifelong journey process and commitment. But yes, you can really go into a wound and really go to the root of it and uproot it and release it. And we're talking with Bankit or one of the speakers about like you when you heal yourself, you are healing an entire lineage. You are releasing all of this and in other people, and that's why it's so important for all of us to start doing this healing journey, because you're not just doing it for yourself. Your daughters, your future children will not have all of this imprint that you're currently holding. So, they would have less to work with. Obviously, this is also not, we're not forgetting their own past lives and that's Smeltenia's life issues that they bring into each lifetime. But it really helps to start the journey now. It really, your soul can evolve and be able to manifest at its highest potential, its highest ability, and so on. And that's the idea. Like, what will life look like if you were creating, from your highest self, from your highest, with highest clarity, highest intention, highest native creativity that is not clustered with a lot of imprint, a lot of or trauma and violent energy. What would that look like? I mean, for me, I just feel like that would be so powerful and so endless. And I've seen, having been on this journey for a while, what my life looks like. And I think about 10 years ago, I mean, I don't even know where I would be if I never started this journey. But like every day, I'm constantly healing a new layer. Just this morning, I was constantly healing a new layer. I had, for me, my gift is with dreams. I do a lot of work in my dreams and in my shamanic journeys, and I discovered a new wound in my ancestral lineage just yesterday. And I was like, oh, I did not know that, and then I started healing it. And every time I do that, I'm releasing for myself and from every other person. And I always tell people, you're also literally changing the archetype of sexuality for the entire human race. Each one of us, every time we do the work, it doesn't end with you. Like, we are changing the vibration such that the next generation, the next people who will be living in the next century, they might not even go through what we are going through because someone changed, the pace. Someone
Yeah.
changed what was happening. Yeah.
I want to share a bit about the ancestral healing because last night I too had a dream and it was an ancestral wound. And then I was aware that it had been going on for about 40 generations on my father's side. And when I surrendered to healing it, I realized that some of the addictive patterns that I've had were coming from this particular wound. And that as well, this wound, like there's different things that have happened in our DNA that people don't really realize. Human beings a long time ago, when we first used to incarnate on this planet, we were able to do phenomenal things. You look at Jesus, you look at all these mystics, they're showing us a potential that all of our physical bodies are able to do. But since interference, negative energies, the shadow consciousness, the ego, all of that has created situations and experiences where we've actually started to go down in consciousness and what we're able and capable to experience in our physical bodies. And I know now, like with the healing that I've done, my perception is so heightened, like the things I can do now, I never dreamed I could ever be able to do that, like that I can be in a room here in Melbourne and be actually aware of what's happening in a woman's body in Kuwait. Just because she's sitting with me on the computer, and be aware of what's happened in her family. And this is a gift that came, it just happened to me. I used to work in IT. I didn't have this gift before. But it happened each time I healed, a new potential of my DNA opened up. And also soul memory comes online. So we have gifts and mastery that we've had in many lifetimes. You know how you said that you were calling yourself a voice, a speaker or a shaman, or a shaman speaker or something like that. But it's probably a storyteller, but it's a gift that you've probably mastered over many experiences as a soul. And so now for that gift to come into its greatest potential, each time you heal like a pattern in your DNA that says, no, women can't use their voices, and no, you can't be successful just being a speaker. Each time you heal that, you allow your potential and your gifts to come on in a much stronger way. I've got people and friends who have had experiences where they start speaking a language they've never spoken. They start knowing how to play an instrument that they have not consciously learned in this lifetime. But this is the potential that our DNA has. And because of all the genetic stress, we are not experiencing any of that, most of us. But some of the children who are being born now, some of them maybe are not carrying as much distortion, or they're a bit more advanced. Some of the children that are coming on now are doing phenomenal things that our generation didn't have that potential coming in. So this is what the healing is doing. It's allowing the new generation to stronger, smarter souls to come and have an experience where they can fully be themselves and be in their full genius. And that's what this healing does. So it absolutely changes your life, because DNA is also it's like, the way I understand DNA, it's like a film reel in a movie projection. So DNA is like, it's like a story, and this is a holographic universe. So if the story you're carrying says, I'm oppressed, I carry shame, I'm not successful, I am overweight, I am this, that's what you're going to create unconsciously. You don't even know that you're consciously creating that. And so when we heal, I've had experiences where I've done a healing on myself, and then literally like the next day I'm shown evidence of that healing. Like I have an experience or an encounter with someone where I'm like, whoa, that never used to happen. You know, and I went from attracting men that would always cheat on me or didn't want to commit to me and wanted me to be like on the side chick. I had that story going on for years, and then I realized I was the one creating that. And somewhere in my DNA and somewhere in my psyche, I had that story. And when I deleted that, it maybe took a few months, but shortly after that, the guy that I met next didn't want me to be a chick on the side. He was like, no, I want you to just be with you. And that was me seeing live evidence of my healing. I was like, whoa, this is like magic.
I always tell my clients this, like sometimes I ask something and 11 minutes later it happens, and it's just gotten so woohoo for me. Even today, my laptop wouldn't start. You know, the charger, I think I need a new charger. It wouldn't start. And last night I had a dream with my guide, and she was telling me that I'm currently healing my throat chakra because I've been struggling with asking for help. I've been struggling with truly expressing myself. And this summit is the first thing that I've done where I'm really claiming my truest expression and speaking the things I've always wanted to speak. And it's just been changing me on many layers and healing my throat chakra, because I think I've been limiting myself with this idea that people will not understand. This is too rude. And I used to limit even my work as a healer because I didn't want to go deep, because of the fear of being rejected and the fear of being abandoned, which is currently connected. It's one of my biggest wounds, the fear of being abandoned, or because it happened to me. It's my inner child. My inner child kept feeling that growing up, although that was just the story. It wasn't real abandonment. But I started healing it at that level. And my spirit got last night, she's like, you need to start asking. Just ask. Keep asking. Keep expressing yourself. And this morning I tried to switch on the laptop without doing my meditation. And I just knew it wasn't gonna work. And so I had to sit still and connect and really figure out why I'm making the laptop not work. Because it was me. I was blocking myself. I needed to process something, you know. And I processed as I was sitting down in stillness. I then remembered the dreams that I had, and I realized a story there, a limiting story there, and I healed it. And as soon as I healed it, I then did the work of asking, can my laptop work? Can you make my laptop work? I came and I switched it on, and it worked. And it sounds like it wasn't this profound thing, but it was so profound for me, because I have always struggled asking. And my ancestral teacher, she's like, You never even say exactly what you want. What do you want? Ask. Say it as it is. And this used to also be very visible for me in relationships with men, in intimate spaces. I wouldn't ask what I want. I wouldn't ask someone to to give me or love me in the way that I want to be loved. So I would want this person to guess how I want to be loved, and then there will be this chaotic problem altogether. But if I want this person to come with me to a poetry event, rather than just say, "Oh, look, I'm going to the poetry," and waiting for them to say, "Should I come with you?" I could just ask. And that was like, I'm realizing all these things, and it is so connected to our ancestors, to our past life memories, to our inner child wounds, our mother wound, our primal wound, and the collective ancestral archetype wound. It's just, my friend was saying, sometimes it feels like it's a lot. What we have to heal is a lot. I mean, yeah, it is a lot, but sometimes it's also like, for me, I'm realizing it's about witnessing. I witness the pain, and somehow it just, because I'm giving myself time to witness and feel through and sit with it, it just heals. Because that's all it wanted me to do, to honor it. So,
And I think
the idea.
it is a lot, but because I do a lot of past life work. And whether you believe in past lives or not, the history of the planet is pretty evident and we are the planet. So what's been going on for us is also what's been going on. If you look at the history of the planet and the suppression and the pain and the conflict and everything that's happened. So whether you believe in past lives or not, it's quite interesting to know that what we are healing for ourselves is it's been such a burden that we've been carrying as souls for such a long time. And so when you look at the time when women like me used to be killed not that long ago, you'd be burnt at the stake and killed.
Yeah.
And so for me, free to be myself and to be having this conversation on a public forum and know that I'm not going to get killed is quite an accomplishment. And so it is a lot to heal, but it's also such an incredible honor. It really is, because it's such a special time on the planet. It's such a special time in the universe. And I often feel like I've got this big audience, watching me, of like guides, ancestors, because they're like, oh man, she's finally going to delete that. Oh my God, yes.
I know.
Every time I achieve something, I'm like, yes. We waited 50 generations for this freedom, and so it is it's also such an honor. And what we have to realize is that we have so much support. So planets are literally realigning themselves into certain constellations that have not happened for like 50 years. If you look at, there's been so many supermoons, so many eclipses. It's all happening for a reason. It's to force you to heal. So we have so much support. It's much, much easier to access information and heal than it ever has been at any time. And it's much more acceptable now to heal, to be vulnerable, honest, to be open. And I think, witnessing that transformation within yourself, witnessing how when the times when you were constricted and in pain and suffering, and then witnessing yourself flower and blossom, it's almost like you get to watch that show of, like the butterfly coming from a caterpillar into like this beautiful, you watch that transition. And I think that journey alone is so magical. Like it's, when do we ever have that? It's like, it's a once in a, I don't know, like lifetime kind of an experience. And so, it can feel heavy and a lot, but when I'm feeling like, sometimes I feel overwhelmed because I'm human, and sometimes I'm just over it. And at those times I usually, will pray and ask for the Divine Mother to hold me like a baby. And it's interesting because I always end up feeling safe. It's like it does, it's like something inside me stops panicking and stops being in fear. And I'm like, okay, no, it's okay. I'm safe. I'm held. I'm loved. And also witnessing the direct result of your life changing for the better and expanding is like such a reward. So we seriously get a reward straight away when we heal. It's like everything levels up. The quality of your relationships, Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's worth it, and it may sometimes feel like a lot, and when it does, take a break, dance, sing, write, take your head out of that whole thing. You know, to process pain, we don't always have to be crying. Sometimes you can just sing a song, you can write a song, you can dance, you can create a comedy. You know, we can transmute things in so many creative ways, and that journey of transmutation through creativity is what made some of the most brilliant geniuses on the planet. Like a lot of the most incredible artists, scientists, they birthed their gifts, their genius through transmuting pain. You know, so
yeah, I used um to believe that I have writer's block because I just would want to write something, but it would never come out. And when I started beginning the journey of connecting with myself, of connecting with all of myself, really, and sitting with all of myself, it's like the blocks, whatever blocks I used to have with my creativity, with my sexual energy, just got instantly released because I faced my pain, because I met my shadows, and I started grieving for all the losses, that I went through, that my soul felt and experienced, and throughout all my lifetimes, right? And just it's so profound for me how I'm able to create at the level that I'm creating. Because there was someone who was asking, how are you running two, three companies at the same time? How are you always so eager and ready to create at this level? And for me, it's just that I'm in my own power right now. I'm so connected to all of it that I can step into whatever leadership I'm asked to step into by spirit, by ancestors. I'm ready to do all of that because every block, every time I was unable to do the work that I wanted to do, every time it seemed like it's difficult, it was just that I haven't healed layers of some specific wound, not even related to the work that I'm being asked to do. And so sometimes I will release this particular wound, and then it would allow me to flourish, to shine, to create easily. And so I used to be a creative coach, and then I realized, no, this is people are not struggling with building their creative businesses or being creative because they don't know how to be creative. Creativity is not something that you have to learn. It's within you. You are a creative being, right? And so it's just really tapping into your own energy. So it means that there is a block that's blocking the creativity, the creator within them. That's what we need to look at. It's not about learning the app you need to use to write your script or whatever. You can do that, but when you sit down, nothing comes out because we still haven't done the work of healing. And that's what we mean, I think, when we're talking about sexuality and leadership, sacred sexual energy and leadership, that even to lead your own life, to be in leadership of your own life, it's still connected to this energy and how you're using this primal energy in your life.
yeah, and it's very interesting that you say that because, for example, I know that I'm a singing spirit, right? But I've spent a huge part of this life not singing. And so when I announced to my friends recently, I was like, I'm actually wanting to focus on music. And they're like, what? We didn't even know you like music. And I was like, well, it's my genius, but I've just been blocked from it for so long, because I had really deep pain of persecution for my gifts as someone who uses their voice to heal. My soul suffered a lot. And so, and the sexual trauma and all of that, I was just like, I ain't doing that. And so healing has meant that I'm now able to express and project on a much bigger level and to do things and unapologetically do them and fearlessly do them. And there's different types of creativity as well. There's creativity that's coming from the mind, and then there's creativity that comes from a higher dimension, which is from the soul. And the creativity that comes from, you could say, in a simple language, creativity that comes from heaven down, travels down the chakras and you birth it. to allow those kind of creative ideas to come through you, like J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, Rumi, Shakespeare. You know, we have all this history of these people who created something that stood the test of time. It was Michael Jackson. You know, these people who created on that level, it's because the stream from the higher levels was clear. And what I've noticed in ancestral healing is that this has been blocked off in a lot of the ancestral, you can call them ancestral curses and ancestral traumas. We have been blocked from knowing that we can do that, and we've been blocked from even accessing it, because people who are powerful creatives, healers, shamans, geniuses, really it's your genius essentially. You know, we haven't always treated our geniuses well on the planet. You know, people have been persecuted, they've been killed, they've been hunted. And so there's this deep inherent fear of our greatness. And that registers in the body, and it registers as you not feeling like you can even sing or express or do anything. You just feel like all you can do is just be, you know, a robot. And what I do see as well in the mainstream is that some of the creativity that's out there is cookie cutter. It's like imitation. It's like you're doing what you know works, but it's not coming from an authentic place. It's not coming from the true soul, and anything that's coming from the soul, it's memorable. You will never forget it. That's how you know something comes from the soul, because it's absolutely memorable. It gives you goosebumps and shivers. It takes you to a whole nother dimension. You can read, I remember, like, even I feel like The Matrix, the movie, actually came from a higher dimension, because that movie changed my life. It was like I watched it and something registered in my subconscious. And my journey, my spiritual journey began. It was like I started questioning things. I started really looking at my life a lot more deeply, seeing the subconscious layers. And this is what art can do. This is what our creative potential is. We can use our creative geniuses to change the world, to change, you know, we can read all the science books and have all the knowledge, or we can sing a song and the download is the same. The outcome, you know, you look at Bob Marley. How many shamanic journeys was he doing with his music?
Yeah.
You watch some of his concerts, people are in this vibe of just pure bliss and pure love that maybe they have never experienced in their whole life. And now after going to Bob Marley's concert, they know that there's this bliss and this love that exists in this life, you know, that's beyond. And so this is the potential that we have when we fully do the work to heal our vessels and to create from a very high place within ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I love this conversation. It's so powerful, and because I think that when people think of, when we say sexual energy, we're thinking of it in related to sex, you know, the act of sex, but it's much bigger than that. It's really where creativity begins, you know. I mean, life begins from the act of sex, right? In this realm, that's how we understand it so far. But yeah, I love this whole conversation, and I think we're about to go 2 hours into it. I think, or not. So we should be wrapping up soon. So what would you say? It's like, you know, for people who are at home and who want to start healing that sexual energy and being in their bodies, what could they start with? What could they start practicing at home? And of course, they should start considering having a healers like me, you know, yes. But yeah,
Okay,
what else?
so when you really don't know anything where to start, I always say everybody's soul is your own teacher. Like, your greatest teacher is your own soul. So I remember when I started my path, before I was a shaman, I remember just asking, like, you know, I just called it out in the universe. I was like, okay, I'm suffering right now. I don't think this is how my life is supposed to be. I honestly don't believe this is what life is meant to be. Please, can you help me? And the next day I walked out of my house. I just randomly decided to go into a bookstore. I went onto this shelf. I picked up a book. It was exactly the book I needed to read in that moment. So one of the most practical things you can do is to listen more to your intuition. So if you have an instinct to do something, to call someone, to read something, do it, follow that, because that is your own spirit trying to help you heal by showing you a pathway. Another practical thing that we can do is really detoxing. Like detoxing for me was like the first thing I ever did on my journey, and it changed my life. Okay.
Oh, what bad.
That's okay.
So
So
detoxing.
really, so detoxing, it doesn't have to be like a fancy diet or whatever, but just taking a look at how you're currently eating and including more nutritious food, like more vegetables. You know, in Africa, go back to the traditional diet as much as possible, like the veggies that you know, as if you can. You know, it's not always easy, but just actually taking an interest in researching and knowing, okay, what are superfoods, how can I be more nourished in my body, because that opens up your intuition tremendously. Like I remember my first liver detox and my first fast, it was like I was like on drugs for weeks. It like, that's how heightened my senses were. I felt superhuman. And when that happened, it aligned me with the right places and synchronicities that allowed me to heal even more. Most people, the problem is because of the diet that most people have, they eat too much meat, too much processed food. That blocks you from being in the body completely. Like if I eat like something that's really heavy and dense, I just am not in my body. I'm numb. And when you're numb, you can't feel, and your intuition's not as clear. So that's a practical thing. Taking on something like spending time in nature whenever you can is a small and simple thing that really makes a huge difference to your overall like state of awareness within yourself. Even if it's going to the park for a walk, you know, like it's a small thing, but that changes a lot. The other thing, working with crystals, healing crystals, because that's a simple thing that helps you kind of align with a higher vibration, which then heightens your intuition. Drinking more water, small but simple and practical. And I guess, yeah, so those things, and we can do things like the yogas. You know, there's a lot of amazing online yoga classes we can take. But anything that you feel drawn to do, because your intuition will guide you, and everyone's healing path is different. You know, my boyfriend, his healing path was Qigong, you know, and martial arts. Mine was dance and yoga. And so everyone's different. So, but your intuition will always guide you to what you need, what the best thing you need. And no one can really say there's one way to do a certain thing, but definitely there's no escaping that we all need to eat and take care of our bodies a little bit better. So having it, just generating an interest in that alone, and just being aware that, like, reading the back of a packet of chips when you buy it, like, do I really want to eat all those numbers? I don't even know what they are. Like, you know, just being more conscious with our food is like the number one first step to awakening and really healing. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah, intuition is the way you begin there. I think because when we disconnect from the body, we also kind of disconnect from our intuition as well, and we're just kind of endlessly passing through life, you know, and feeling that events are happening to us, and then that's also where the suffering starts coming, and feeling like, oh my God, why me, right? So there is a need to go back into the body, into stillness, into intuition, because you are your greatest teacher and your greatest healer. It's that simple. Yeah. Nehanda, thank you so much for joining me. But before I sign out, you should tell people how they can work with you. People who want to go deep and do past life healing, sexual energy healing, all the things.
Okay, so the best way to contact me, I'm a little bit old school at the moment because I'm transitioning from careers, and I am mostly contactable via social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Nehanda Yemaya, or Shun Lilith, specifically related to feminine healing. And I have an email, which I guess you can put in the post. Just contact me via email. That's probably like the easiest way to start, to hear about what my services are and what you need. Basically, I do a lot of one-to-one sessions, group work, coaching, counseling. So just depending on what you feel like you need, I heal traumas. I can heal from a distance. Energy is not restricted to distance. So all the people I work with are all over the world. And I can help actually shift blockages in the energy field, and actually bring your awareness to what's happening so you can name it and actually understand the root cause of whatever's going on for you. That's one of my gifts is knowing how to help people with that. So
I love that. I love that. You guys, you should work with her. She is amazing. This girl, I'm always reading your posts, and I'm like learning a lot all the time about feminine energy and everything in between. She is powerful. So if you really want to go deep into healing these wounds that we're talking about today, she's your girl. So email her. Her link is also in our landing page of the summit, so that you can see her Facebook or Instagram page, one of the two. Yes. Thank you so much. This was a powerful conversation.
It was.
I cannot wait to see what my downloads are going to be tonight, because I know I'm going to download some. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. We are still continuing. Tomorrow there's another powerful conversation on feminine energy healing, women, and tantra, and yeah, amazing things really. So keep your eyes here. Be here. Let's heal ourselves. Okay. Bye bye, guys.